They don't owe him anything in the sense of sending him to a contender. If he wants out, he can find his way out after his contract is up. He could be an unrestricted free agent and choose exactly where he wants to go. And that's really what he could have done. He could have been 31 years old, like DeMarcus Ware. Pick where you want to go to. Choose the best possible Super Bowl contending team and roll with them. So welcome back to the Optimistic Fan Club. Clearly, the title of this show is being tested deeper than it ever has been because, as you've heard, why you clicked on this video, we're talking about Myles Garrett requesting a trade out of Cleveland. We're going to talk about my reaction to this, my initial thoughts and feelings, whether that means that Cleveland is now entering a rebuild or can they reload, and how long is it going to take to recover from this. So let's start with the reaction. I think that after 2023, the miracle season, Joe Flacco, Myles Garrett, Defensive Player of the Year, the defense really performing at a historical level in some metrics, you would have been shocked to say 1 year later, the Browns are going to go 3-14, and then their best player, the best player really that they've had in the past 25 years, one of the best players in the franchise's history, is going to request to leave when we all thought he was going to be a lifer. The guy owns a part of the Cavs. We would have fallen to our knees then and there, and we would have appreciated last year so much more for what it was. But now he wants out. And I think that this is the first thing that we should say before even talking about a reaction. Some people have speculated Mary Kay Cabot going on whatever show it was saying that this is kind of a tactic, that he's going to wind up signing a contract extension and he's going to be coming back. I think he's made it abundantly clear this isn't about the money. This is about the direction that the team is going and that he doesn't believe in it. So I've made my peace with this already. Myles Garrett is no longer a Cleveland Brown in my eyes, and that's not a salty position. That's me being a realist about where this thing is headed and what the team is going to look like come September. He's not going to be there. With that being said, Myles Garrett's a unique character. How many defensive ends have over 1 million followers on Instagram? They get multiple national ads. They're going to be in Super Bowl commercials. Friends with LeBron James. He's a high-profile character. For a defensive player, he is just about as high-profile as you get. You know, there's the Nick Bosas. There's some other guys out there, but no one really gets the attention on a national scale that him, TJ Watt, and a couple other handful of guys get. Myles Garrett is really near the pinnacle, and it makes sense. He's the best defensive player in the league, arguably. So it only makes sense for him to want to solidify his legacy. And I think that this is similar to the LeBron move. And we all heard he consulted LeBron about leaving Cleveland because who's better to ask than the guy who did it twice? But I think that for Garrett to say that this is only about winning is a little disingenuous, because what does winning result in? A better legacy. And what does legacy do for you? It builds you a long, financially stable, luxurious lifestyle long after you've retired. Winning lends itself to more money. So I think that those things go hand in hand. Yes, I'm sure he wants a Lombardi trophy. He wants a Super Bowl ring. Or at least he wants to feel like he's in a serious competition for one each and every year. Him being traded isn't going to guarantee a Super Bowl ring. Far from it. Like, who knows if he'll even be dealt to a contender at the end of the day. I'm sure that he wants that, but does Cleveland have the responsibility to do that? We're going to talk about that in a little bit. But just going back to that initial point of Garrett saying that he wants to move on so he can win, I think that he really just wants to be in the conversation more of being someone in the orbit of the Super Bowl, because you can't guarantee that move. He's not going to the Chiefs. Maybe he'll go to the Lions, but are they even going to be good enough after the departure of all of their coordinators to be competing for Super Bowls every year? Who knows? We will see. But I think there's a little bit of coded language in all of this. I think that his legacy will be fine no matter what at the end of the day, even if he never wins a Super Bowl. Like, look at Bruce Smith. Sure, the guy went to 4 Super Bowls. He lost them all. He's the all-time sack leader, though. I just think as a defensive player, it's not like being a quarterback where you need a Super Bowl ring. It's like if Joe Burrow, after 10 seasons, is staying on the Bengals and they're never reloading him with the talent he needs or making the right moves defensively and they just keep chipping out, then yeah, sure. A guy like that, that's like a LeBron move where you're saying, okay, we're going to put ourselves in a position where we're not playing with, you know, Delonte West and Anderson Varejao. Like, yeah, those aren't championship caliber pieces around the guy, but Myles Garrett's a defensive player. I just like don't really see why in year 9 that this move needs to be made because there's so much uncertainty in making this move. You're not in the position to be able to pick and choose where you go. You're not a free agent. Like, you could have done it the DeMarcus Ware way, where after your contract is up in 2 seasons, you're still going to be a good enough player to contribute to a Super Bowl roster. You can then go and pick exactly where you want to go as an unrestricted free agent. Why not wait until that point? Because like I've said multiple times now, there's no guarantee that you're actually going to a contender. There's no guarantee that even the team you get dealt to, if they are a contender, that you're going to get to that position. So I think that this move is obviously it's selfish. And I think that he's earned the right to be selfish. But I just think that at the end of the day, Cleveland can't be looking out for Myles Garrett's best interest. No, I do not think that the Browns should hold Myles Garrett hostage. If he wants to go, let him go. But don't do it to a contender if they are not offering the best possible price point. You can't do that. It is not what is best for the team. And if that ultimately ends things off in a negative way, too bad. Myles Garrett is the one who decided to quit on his team while he was still under contract and move on for more personal legacy gain. So they don't owe him anything in the sense of sending him to a contender. If he wants out, he can find his way out after his contract is up. He could be an unrestricted free agent and choose exactly where he wants to go. And that's really what he could have done. He could have been 31 years old, like DeMarcus Ware. Pick where you want to go to. Choose the best possible Super Bowl contending team and roll with them. Because, I mean, imagine Garrett goes to Washington or something like that, and it was a flash in the pan. They're not going to be back in NFC championships guaranteed. They're kind of middling because a guy like Bobby Wagner retires and, you know, some of those key veteran pieces wind up moving on and they aren't the same. They don't have the same magic that they did in his rookie season. You're just stuck on a team that's middling forever. So yeah, it's extremely disappointing. It sucks. I love Myles Garrett. I really do wish the best for him, but this idea that Browns fans are so defeated that they're like, you got to let him move on and send him wherever he wants to go. You got to keep swinging. You got to keep fighting. There's coaches on this team that are trying to keep their job, people in the front office, and there's players like Denzel Ward, Wyatt Teller, Jerry Jeudy, who just came in, David Njoku, guys who have been all about Cleveland their whole careers, who have been supportive and team guys. You owe it to those guys to continue to put your team in the best position to succeed. So if Myles Garrett's going to quit and walk out, make sure you get as much as you need. Do not send him to a contender if they aren't offering the best possible package. So that being said, moving on to the point where he is going to be traded. Is it a reload or a rebuild? Honestly, I think that this team can very well be reloaded and ready to compete without needing a complete strip down to the studs. The thing that is going to determine whether it is a rebuild or a reload is how much you get back for Garrett and how you reload your roster in the first round of the draft. If you have 2 first-round picks, maybe 3 first-round picks potentially, you know, you essentially do with the 33rd overall pick. If you can get 3-4 picks in that first area, you can go out, you can get an Abdul Carter if he isn't taken number 1 overall. If Abdul Carter's taken number 1 overall, maybe you like Cam Ward at number 2. Maybe you like Travis Hunter. You can put yourself in a position to get more guys that fit the system, that fit everything that Stefanski, Tommy Rees, Jim Schwartz are trying to do, and that they've been very successful with when they've had the ability to make the decisions autonomously, aside from the Paul DePodestas of the world and organization meddling. When the football guys have been able to make football decisions and player decisions, the team has been a lot better. Additionally, we want to talk about John Dorsey versus Andrew Berry. Clearly, there's no defense that this front office has right now. The way things have been managed, all the stuff, firing Alex Van Pelt, bringing in Ken Dorsey, the Deshaun Watson fiasco, we're in no position to defend them. However, how hard is it to hit on multiple first-round picks if you're just taking the best player available? I think that easily could change a lot of the perception and the way that this team is constituted going forward. So if you hit on 4-5 draft picks this year, which I do not think is that difficult considering that you have multiple seconds, you're probably going to wind up having multiple firsts, you could change your team immediately in 1 year. And I don't think that it's going to be as drastic as what you saw with Washington. There aren't many Jaden Daniels in this draft. There's not many Jaden Daniels ever in NFL history. But if you get back to doing what you do best of running the ball, you play good team defense, and it's not overly reliant on Myles Garrett breaking the game every single time, you're going to be okay. Because I really do believe, like, the Browns pass rush, their front seven in general, not overloaded with superstars, but has good depth. It's like before Alex Wright was injured this year, really solid. Isaiah McGuire was a really solid piece. And I'm not talking about these guys as like your number one game breaker. You need that. Like, that's where you need an Abdul Carter. That's what Myles Garrett was. Every team needs their number one guy. But when you have collective depth around that, that means that you're one piece away. Like Mike Hall, before his injury, basically last game of the season, the guy was really getting on a tear and really starting to look like a good professional football player and a hit in the second round. I think that the offensive skill is in a good position, minus running back, which will be a main point of addressing in this draft at some point, whether it's one of the, Henderson or Judkins out of Ohio State, whether it's Devin Neal out of Kansas, Jordan James from Oregon late on. Like, there's going to be multiple areas where you can hit on a running back. And if you use that in the system to get back to what they're doing, I think that they could be a very competitive team. So for me, I do think that if Garrett is the only domino to fall, you can reload. You can absolutely reload and you can be back. Are you going to be the same? Absolutely not. But this idea that we were going to have to rely on him solely to make you a competitor is an indication that this team is not going to do anything in the playoffs anyways, because you can shut down a defensive end at some point. Like, they did it. Garrett went multiple games, stretches last year where he recorded no sacks, and then he'd have 4 sacks in a game. And then it'd be a couple weeks, and then he'd have 3 sacks in a game. It was very up and down like that. So if you get consistent performance with better depth all around, you can make up for that. So with all that being said, of course, like, you're never going to be the same without a Myles Garrett. But I just think that this roster in general can be very effective still and competitive if they just stockpile depth, get a good rotation of guys, and have their homegrown talent that's really been developed with Alex Wright, with Isaiah McGuire, Mike Hall, as he'll continue to improve. You load that up with some other guys, like maybe a Mike Green out of Marshall, Abdul Carter, like we mentioned early on. You're going to have an effective pass rush still and a solid front seven. So I think that you can reload. What does that mean, though? Honestly, I think high end, the absolute high end, 10 wins. I think the base of what needs to happen to stop a complete blow up and rebuild, where all those extra pieces who are still under contract, who have been core contributors over the past 5 years, you got to get back to 7 wins from 3. And I think that that is not like with a picture perfect offense. 7 wins with a rookie quarterback or a free agent who you're bringing in and you're still looking for the answer. I think that that is good enough. And this is always a thing where it's like people listening will be like, how are our standards so low? Blah, 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 blah. 7 wins is like, guys, like, the window of Super Bowl contention with the way the roster was compiled and everything has closed. It is officially closed without Myles Garrett now. What we're talking about, 7 wins, is getting you back on track. So then the next year you hit on those last key pieces with young guys. You continue to build the culture, and then you can seriously start talking about playoff runs again. Next year would be a miracle if they made the playoffs. I would not rule it out. Who knows? Anything can happen. However, the next 2 seasons are going to be about selling off the right pieces, keeping the right key veteran pieces, and just building your depth across the board. So will other pieces follow Myles Garrett? We've already seen some whispers that Joel Bitonio could potentially consider retirement. Denzel Ward, potentially. Could he follow suit? I wouldn't say it's as dire. I think he would stick out another season in Cleveland. He's a year younger. I think that he would stick out another season, and then the Browns might move him if we're just looking like, hey, man, send him to a contender mid-season, and we'll load up on picks, whatever. That's a possibility. I think Garrett is the only for sure. I'd put Bitonio at probably 75% that he retires if Garrett does wind up getting moved and he feels that they're not in the right position. But how far off are they from getting back to the point of what we thought we were in 2020, of what we thought we were back in 2023 with that miracle season? Obviously a quarterback. That is without a doubt. The offensive line was going to need to be retooled no matter what. We saw how they performed. We've seen their injuries. We've seen their age starting to creep up. That was without a doubt. You have to improve the offensive line, and running back had to be improved. This return back to this Kubiak-style offense, the wide zone offense, that is what has made them good. That is what made Baker Mayfield have his best year as a pro up until this past season. If they get back to that, if they can run the ball, and if they can play good enough defense with loading up in those shortcoming areas, there's no doubt that Cleveland can be competitive. Will they have the culture, the leadership, all that's needed to get over the hump in tight games? I don't know. But just to say that Myles Garrett leaving negates any of that possibility is crazy, because we saw how they performed this year. 3-14. That is an issue beyond Myles Garrett. That issue rests on the shoulders of meddling from the front office, inept quarterback play, a lack of running back depth, and an injured offensive line. That can be fixed in one season. Seriously, a horrible team can become good within 2 seasons. Look at the Eagles. They looked like they were superstars with Carson Wentz. Wentz gets injured. They have the fiasco. They win the Super Bowl with Nick Foles. Then they fall down. Doug Peterson gets fired, and now they're back to their second Super Bowl in 2 seasons, 3 seasons. It's all about loading up in these key areas. Is Jalen Hurts that talented of a quarterback? He doesn't carry anyone. He has weapons around him. They have a good offensive line, and now they have the best running back in football. Sure, yeah. Saquon Barkley definitely helps that. But the point is, when you load up with talent, you are going to be in the conversation every year. The Browns have been top heavy. Myles Garrett has made them top heavy. This investment into Deshaun Watson made them extremely top heavy, and they haven't had the draft equity to replace these things. Moving on from Garrett, getting everything you can for him puts you back with the ability to be there, because they were not far off back in 2020. In 2021, if Baker doesn't get injured, who knows? In 2022, if Jacoby Brissett doesn't throw multiple interceptions every single time they're in a close game and their defense plays better, maybe they're better. So I really don't think that they're that far off, but it really relies on depth, getting everything you can for Myles Garrett. You can't meet all of his demands. If he wants to leave, he can leave, but he's going to the highest bidder, and we'll see where we are after that. But it's definitely a mix of emotions. I'd love to know what you guys think about it. Drop it in the comments. Head over to the Patreon. We have a ton of prospect videos that we've done that are up, ready to watch. Ashton GT, Travis Hunter, Cam Ward. We're going to be doing a lot more, probably a Shadur Sanders. We did Abdul Carter recently, so go check that out. Support the page. Appreciate you guys, and I'll see you in the next one.